Gareth, the character Uncle Rudy that you created in Blue Beetle is inspired by one of your own uncles, and he truly embodies just Mexican-American fusion in that culture. Can you tell us a little bit about how your family members inspire your creations?
Well, I have a very big family and also a very big extended family. So, like, for example, my mom had 11 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my mom's father had, like, I think it was around 11 or 12 brothers and sisters. So you meet many archetypes of people.
Characters.
Yeah. And you actually love all of these people that are in varying degrees of imperfect. They always end up in many ways in what I write. My favorite sort of films are films where I can see a person and say, that reminds me of this person, which George did when he read the Rudy character. He was like, oh, I know this guy. And the way he would say, I know this guy, he was like, he could tell he knew who this person was, and he could make that person real. So he really elevated the character, where when even Rudy's family members, they would be like, it just really reminds me of him.
Yeah, and in
a really nice way.
You were saying it really reminded you of your uncle, your family of your uncle.
Absolutely, yeah.
Want to know the difference between a bad superhero movie and a good superhero movie? In my opinion, it's the writer. A good writer can get you to smile when the world is crumbling, a boat is sinking, or your heart is breaking. Today's storytellers, I'm so excited to introduce you to my favorite superhero writer, Gareth Dunnet-Alcocer. Gareth is a visionary screenwriter whose groundbreaking work on DC Comics' Blue Beetle has changed the game in the superhero genre. Today, we talk about where his unique perspective comes from, how he crafts characters to fill audiences with joy and understanding, and his work on hit films like Miss Bala. Stay tuned, because we are spilling secrets on the project he's been tapped to work on. I'll give you a hint. It's part of the superhero world on Amazon. Welcome to the studio, Gareth Dunnet-Alcocer. Your take on Jaime Reyes, the protagonist of Blue Beetle, contrasts significantly with traditional superheroes, because usually in superhero narratives, it's all about hiding their superhero-ness from the world. And Jaime, in this narrative, because of his cultural background, his Hispanic background, in Hispanic families, the family is very much involved with everybody's business. So instead of him being able to hide it, he basically shares his...
Well, he has no choice.
He has no choice to share his superhero-dom with everybody. So that unique perspective, that unique dynamic, how much beyond just Uncle Rudy did your own family dynamics play into crafting this family for the DC universe?
I mean, hugely. I really think that for me, the way that I approach character and that I approach stories, I have to connect to something about it, because it's very hard to write when you're really making it up, when you don't have any kind of, when you're not tethered to some kind of emotional reality or emotional sincerity. And really what makes you think about it a lot and what makes you sort of connect to it, you have to connect to it emotionally first, because if you don't, really nobody is going to.
Yeah.
Why, unless the only emotion they can have is annoyance or boredom. So if it makes you angry, it'll make somebody else angry. If it makes you sad, but genuinely makes you feel certain things, it will. And in terms of the characters and the world and the personal things, everything about the way the story comes together, it really reflects one way or another things I experienced. So in many ways, like Jaime graduates college. That's how the movie starts.
Sure.
I've always loved the movie The Graduate.
Yeah.
And I always wanted it to be like the graduate, he graduates, and it's like he's a wealthy kid from California, right? I think he lives in Beverly Hills.
Yep.
Well, and it's everybody's like, oh, look at all the options you have. What are you going to do now? And he has this ennui of options and this existential impasse.
Existential crisis.
Right. Whereas if you're Mexican American, it's like, congratulations, you know, motherfucker. Like,
you got college.
Now what are you going to do now? Like, now you're in debt. So what
Sure.
now? But more than that is like when Jaime, I studied abroad. So I studied in Colorado college. And I would come back to Mexico. And everybody would pick me up at the airport, and and my mom would be there, my sister would be, and it would be embarrassing to, you know, because and you feel a lot of pressure as well because
Indian families are the same way.
So you feel that like, oh my God, no. But at the same time, you are genuine about how much you love these people.
Yeah.
They just kind of embarrass you sometimes, and also the pressure of saying I went there and I come back and I have to deliver on some way. The same goes for the fact that you go there, and then when you come back, people don't tell you bad news while you're gone.
No, of course not.
Because there's no point to them.
Yes.
To you, it feels terrible not to know. So then you come back and you go, oh, yeah, this happened. And, you know, so when Jaime tells your dad's, you know, almost got a heart attack, you actually got heart attacks. It's funny my dad never went through that, but my mom had a lung tumor removed. And I didn't find out for a year.
They didn't tell you.
Yeah, because she was like, I didn't want to worry you. It was like, well, I'm worried now. What if you have another one and I don't find out? But that's the way sort of it worked. So that thing of going and coming, of that family, of where they all going, Jaime, that's very like my family.
Really like your family.
Yeah.
We were big, you know, and in South Asian families, we were big. I had like lots of secrets from my parents because there's lots of things you're not allowed to do, and but they were always very open and sharing every little bit. So for me, it was interesting to watch this dynamic in and around keeping secrets in the household, because he has this very hard time keeping secrets, and I loved how you brought into your storytelling all these little nuances of Hispanic culture. So you really understood what it is to be in that family. Tell me about secret telling and the Latino community and how this affected these characters when you were trying to bring the family into the story.
For sure. I mean, well, it's interesting because it also goes to the rest of it. Like, Milagro, Jaime's sister, right? In the comics, she's way younger. But so is Jaime. Jaime's 17, and she's a kid. She's literally a kid. And in this one, Jaime's like 22, and she's 17. I have 4 sisters, and they always know what the fuck's, and they're younger than me, and they always know what the fuck's up before I do. They always understand the reality of they always find out the secrets first. I think if my mom's sick, they find out first. If all the bad shit, in a way, it's because I think at least Mexican women put a lot of pressure on other Mexican women, whereas my mom babied me. So you're a moron about so many things, whereas your sisters are made to be strong, I think, because whether it's intentional or unintentional, they know the world's not necessarily the best place or the most feminist place. Yeah. Whether it's intentional or not, the mother makes you tougher.
Strong
so Jaime has these ideas that are very like lofty, and his sister's very they're like, oh yeah, no, yeah. So he doesn't know why he's not being successful, and his sister understands reality way more than he does.
Growing up in Querétaro, Mexico, and being around that culture, I'm sure you grew up with many local legends, cultural narratives. Were there any like family stories or legends that you remember being a pivotal point to you just being like, man, I really love this magical storytelling world?
Well, it wasn't like, it's funny because you don't look at it as like magical storytelling, but it's just a comfort with things that don't have to be fully explained, or supernatural things. So in my family, the ghost stories, the horror stories, the stories about it was very intertwined with that, with really a very syncretic way of looking at reality. And there's like superstition, And there's like when I was growing up, if you saw a scorpion, it was like a really bad sign. But like where you genuinely just believed it. Like if I saw a scorpion, I was like, ah, fuck. And you're very scared of them. I was. And so all these, or just my grandparents' house was like a 300-year-old house.
Wow.
So, and they didn't, they only had lived in it the last 50 years. So it was like a place like that just lends itself to all kinds of
imagination too.
Yeah, and people, the way they interact with the place and what they see in the place, or like in my family there was a lot of people that thought they had shining, so like they could, but not everybody had it. But
ghosts.
Yeah, and also ghosts, but also to have premonition, to have just stuff like that. So that I grew up very much in the vicinity of, and just really fearing it, thinking it was cool. Never experiencing it, never having because also I have my father's from Scotland, so he was the
other side of it.
Yeah, he was like, none of that's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So you grew up with like one leg.
The two dynamics. We grew up in a similar way. My mom took me to see the very first temple where I held a pendant that secreted tirtham, which is the holy honey in South Asia. And she put a quarter-size pendant in my hand, and my hand filled with honey.
What? That's amazing.
Yeah, and I was so young. It's called tirtham. I was so young that if you ask me where my magic came from, or my belief in magic, or even where my storytelling magic comes from, it's just when you see something as a kid or hear these stories as a kid, it changes.
That's a great story.
It changes the ways that you see the world. Because now anything's possible,
Must have been
right?
mind-blowing. Yeah.
Anything's possible. Is there a particular moment from those early childhood years that you remember falling in love with story or being like, this is what I want to do?
Well, my family members are amazing storytellers. And growing up, storytelling in one way or another was a currency. So if you have a giant family, if you can tell a good story, people are going to listen to you.
Sure.
And you're going to get a little bit of attention. You're going to get attention. Yeah. And my grandmother was an insanely good storyteller. Really, almost everybody in my family is amazingly good at telling you a story, at understanding where to pause, at understanding where to shoot you a look, where to raise your eyebrows, where to like just little by little just wrap you into a place and put you somewhere where it really is innate. Like I really grew up around it to such a degree that I really feel that to me it can be so I just really grew up around great storytellers, really great storytellers, especially my grandmother. The tradition was very much people, we would eat at their house, and they would, my grandfather would just kind of get up and sort of go somewhere else, and then you would stay there, and then my grandma would tell you a story. It could be about whatever.
It's a cultural thing. She just tell you, just talk.
Yeah, about something about the revolution or something about, sometime they went to Turkey and somebody wanted to steal their daughters. But the way she's telling, the way she just starts, the confidence, the slow.
Yeah.
She was amazing at it.
Learn the art form.
Yeah. And then my dad is also from the Scottish side, was an amazing storyteller as well. But very different type of storyteller than my grandmother. Which is very, very much more, also very transporting. I have to say, the best stories ever told to me, I think, are either my grandma or my dad.
Wow.
Yeah. And I feel like even when you drink with at least the Scottish people that he hung around, it was very much like you tell a story and everybody drinks and just listens to it, and it better be funny at the end, or it better go somewhere. And it just goes like that. And if you tell yours and it's boring, they'll stop you.
Clear the room.
Yeah.
Tell me about your time at the AFI Conservatory. Specifically, were there any influences from that period of your learning that you really brought into the next phase of your storytelling career? Any mentors or any narrative styles or choices that were kind of defined during those years?
Yeah. I mean, AFI to me was just an incredible place to be, because growing up in Querétaro, I had never, the notion of a movie or of making a movie or of knowing anybody that makes movies or that likes them as much as you do was sort of non-existent.
Sure.
So to me, the AFI became a place where everybody you studied with really loved it as much as you did, and the teaching was incredible, and it had a like a philosophy to it. It wasn't just, oh, here's filmmaking, here's some good movies, here's why these movies are good. There was a sense when I went that AFI had a and it's funny because had a point of view on filmmaking, and the point of view they have on filmmaking is literally on point of view. So
Creating your point of view.
not necessarily. I mean, yes, to them it's like, yeah, I take it, but it's much more purist in a storytelling perspective,
Okay.
right? So like, there is the what do you want to say and what do you believe
Sure.
about these things, which are huge and very important. But when you are telling a story, as you and I are both sitting here, whose eyes are we with? So, for example, maybe I'm really nervous in this story, right? How are you gonna and then in this interview, right? Or maybe right before I came in, I dropped acid, right? and I'm coming here and I'm sitting here.
That's a different episode, everybody.
But you know, if you see me do that,
Yeah.
you'll arrive with me in my point of view, and you'll go, oh fuck, we know something I don't.
Got
But
it.
it's more like the audience knows something I know, but that you don't know.
Absolutely.
So now, are you gonna play your suspense or my tension,
Yeah.
right? Or actually the other way around. So you'll start seeing me act strange. So if I showed you that piece upstairs when I drop acid in my car and then I come down here,
Then you understand why you're acting strange.
and it'll be one type of story. But if I don't, then I'm on your point of view because I only know what you know right now.
And that's a totally different story.
And that's a completely different way to frame. It's a
Yeah.
completely different way to edit. It's a completely different rhythm because then, you know, little by little, I imagine that would be a very weird thing. But it's like, are
Could
we waiting
be.
for Adrucia to figure this out? Or how it starts to affect you, and then you start cutting to the other people going like, what the fuck is with this guy? Or, you know what I'm saying? So those things are point of view. And that's a very basic example. But really the notion of narrative point of view, of emotional point of view, are enormous in storytelling. A really quick other example is, imagine you are going to go have dinner with a couple, right? And as you're driving over there on the way, right, somebody tells you, hey, fuck man, like Alyssa yesterday found out that John's having an affair, but she
Now-
hasn't told him.
Yep.
And then you arrive. The other version is you're driving back home.
And you find out afterwards.
Yes, they're completely, you went to the same dinner.
Yes.
Both the people, John and whatever, they already knew that thing and were going through
Completely
it.
different experiences.
Your point of view of that experience
Yes.
is massively different.
Yes.
The great filmmakers, the great storytellers understand who they want to be with. Not that there's the right or wrong, but they understand who to be with and how to play that instrument, and how at some point in the acid story, it's better to be in my point of view, and then at some point you want to switch to yours.
my point of view,
because it'll be more engrossing to what you realize that I'm
Sure.
going fucking nuts or something.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. When we talk about you moving into Hollywood, and you have done so while bringing so much of your cultural heritage with you, how has it framed the work that you have decided to take on? Is it naturally stuff that has come to you? Or are you someone who feels deeply about those roots and that background and wanting to make sure that it's part of everything that you do?
To me, it's less about trying to be a cultural ambassador, really. Although I think that's a very important thing to be, and that some people should be that. But I think if you're a cultural ambassador, then you're that first, and then a storyteller second.
Sure.
I'm a storyteller first, and then whatever else is second. But the way that I approach storytelling comes very much connected through. I think it's like things will take the shape of the object.
Yes.
So for me, like if you tell me the story of Blue Beetle, Blue Beetle is the water, and you'll pour it into my pitcher, and
through yours perception.
it'll take my shape.
Absolutely.
And it's very identity driven. It's very very curious about identity because my identity is very weird, right? Like I have a name my mom can't pronounce. Like I don't look Mexican,
Gareth.
at least by the regular Mexican sort of what a Mexican looks like.
Sure.
But I do feel very closely connected to Mexico. But you grow up looking and being, not necessarily being, but looking very different from everybody else. So those stories have really appealed to me, and they don't have to just be about a person from another country. It can just be about somebody who feels different, who is different, who has to assimilate or not assimilate, things like that.
I want to talk a little bit about Contrapelo and Miss Bala, but I just have to say, just as someone who watches all the Marvel, all the DC, all the different narratives, if you guys didn't get a chance to watch Blue Beetle, like this was a superhero book or story for the books. And Gareth, like to be a solo writer on a DC story, we very rarely see solo writers. So cheers to your ability to marry comedy with this real hero's journey. It was
Thank you. That's very kind.
Beautiful to watch.
And that really is also a testament to the generosity and trust that the other artists working on this, like Angel, the director, or the producers, everybody that really sort of gave me that opportunity and place. So, yeah.
When you're working, before we get into Miss Bala and Contrapelo, when you're working with a director like that on something like Blue Beetle or any of these others, how much are you interacting with him throughout the creative process?
A lot.
Tell us a little bit about your process with the director, because I think your narratives specifically are very, you have a visual in mind when you're building these out. So how is your process as a writer working with a director? How is it collaborative? How do you approach it?
I've always really liked it because I studied directing, and I don't think of scripts as the final product. I think of them as a movie. So it's really fun when you run into another person who's the same, and you get to just sort of spitball and say.
Do you have a lot of direction in your script, or are you talking through it?
Not about camera, but what you are eliciting images, and you are eliciting color, and you're eliciting beats and rhythms and things that you understand from a visual standpoint, right? So I honestly, it's all about the read. So you should. It's not that you should never do it. It's just gonna make it suck. And if you just say we zoom into this or we dolly out of this, how fast, how short, from what angle, like it'll never be specific enough. But it's more about how you're creating the rhythms and all that stuff. But even with Angel, it was a lot of imagery because I pull a lot of imagery as I'm writing, and I pull a lot of visual references.
You're literally taking pictures, making a mood board.
Yeah.
You're pulling.
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah. And like, what does the city look like? What does the wardrobes look like? What does what does the suit look like? What is the aesthetic of this thing? What is the because that'll make me excited visually. So I really can't just think about it on terms, when people are like, writers, you write what people say.
Yeah.
No, it's the movie.
Yes.
You write the movie. And it might play different for somebody else. It might be different, but you have to have all that. So with Angel, it was awesome because it was, it was sending him visual references and him saying, oh my God, your visual references are so similar to mine. These are great. They're put together, because you really are trying to execute something in live action that, and also create a brand for it, create a mood for it. So that was really fun. And also, when Angel came onto the project, he really reckoned, because he was Latin American, because he's Puerto Riqueño, he could understand the characters I had built and say, oh my God, I totally get why this person's like this. Oh my God, I totally get it. So he really brought so much to it from the point of view of understanding, because sometimes it's just, look, if I was a producer of a film set in China, you would have to explain many things to me because I just simply am not Chinese. Not because I'm a bad or a good person. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, oh, why don't we cut this scene out? And you go, no, because if you cut the scene out,
you change the whole meaning.
Yes, you will change its meaning. So
I love that you use visual references. When Charlie and I write, we're acting the scenes out.
Yeah.
So I love that for you it's visual, because I think it's interesting to share with our audience like the different ways that writers and creatives really get into it. Some people it's music. I know I had a writer I worked with that was music.
For me as well.
But for you, music as well?
You really, to me, I really try to see the movie, and those are what is fun is that if you really start getting into the groove of something, it'll speak to you all the time. So you'll be at the line at a bank or a coffee shop, and a song will start playing. You go, oh my God, that song is the subtext of this, or this should be playing here, or that should be playing there. And with Blue Beetle, there's a very specific decision making about the music, and some of those songs Angel brought, and they're awesome. Some of them we both realized, oh my God. It's funny, if you put two Latin Americans in the same place, you start realizing, holy fuck, we have been educated very similarly.
Wow.
By media, by music, by our parents, by colonization, by Catholicism, by, the notion of revolution. Which is, to Americans, that's like, they don't even, they had a revolution, but they call it the Civil War.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's a
different type of revolution.
But whereas in Latin America, it's like, it's around the corner all the time, or right behind you. So the way he could understand that we both understood that, really helped us select some things. But then there's just, how do you create pieces of music that you can play for people and make you know how something feels?
See the visual and feel it.
Or even with a character, like, if you can see the actor, right? Like, like one of the first things I pitched Walter Hamada, I just showed him a video of of my Uncle Rudy, of the real Rudy.
And he got it right away.
Oh, because the guy's like in his backyard, and he was lighting a fire pit with a flamethrower. so I was like, oh my God, you never expect that guy to do that. And just the notions of the synthwave look of it, of the fact of the pinks and the purples and the blues.
Oh, absolutely.
So you try to put all that together. So when people read it and when they talk, they don't see, oh, here are some characters and here's something that happens.
They
go, oh, this is a movie. Like this is that's, I think, the job, my job at least.
That's a beautiful part of your process. I have a whole notes page because once I get a movie in my head, I'll be at the bank or whatnot, just like you. And instead of a song, it'll be, I have quotes. People say things that I make movie lines all day long. If you're around me, I might make whatever you say a movie line.
I had a teacher, a screenwriting teacher, that kept writing down shit that students would say. It was funny, like people would just say, like, because people do say the weirdest
things.
Yeah.
And I love them. This episode was brought to you in partnership with Little Black Tux. Little Black Tux is my go-to when I need a timeless look. Whether I'm speaking on a film panel, walking a red carpet, or need a bold, sophisticated look for a photo shoot, Little Black Tux has me covered. Little Black Tux isn't just a clothing company, they're a company with a story, a strong why. And you know I love a good story. They're breaking boundaries and creating clothing that empowers women with versatile, upscale options. I love my Little Black Tux, and I know you will too. You in Contrapelo explore these themes and moral dilemmas between revenge and right and wrong. How do you approach a story where right and wrong, the line between it, is so blurred, and where you have to delve into these questions of moral ambiguity? Because you love that in your story.
Yeah.
So I want to know what that's about.
I don't know why. That's a great question. I think I'm not really sure why, and a lot of people have pointed it out. Like, I like ambiguous people because I think we're all ambiguous people. But then the notion of people having to choose at a moment in time the right thing has always been something that mortifies me. I don't know why. Maybe
mortifies
because
you.
I feel like whenever I arrive at this, when you have power or when you arrive at a point where what you do has consequences, will you have chosen the right thing?
Sure.
So that to me is very.
It's one of those moments in a character.
Yes, and I feel like in life, in your life, you're having that. You can say you have it every second, you're choosing, but you really have in life a few, maybe 10, 5 moments where you are going to make decisions that will impact other people truly,
sure,
and yourself. And have you made the right choice? And then I
This is what keeps you up at night, huh?
yeah, maybe. And I think that the barber in that story is somebody who has certainty, and which is something that I have it about many things, but I don't have it about the things he has certainty about, which is, and that this is about a Mexico from 10 years ago,
Sure.
where it was like, and you would hear so many people be like, just kill all of these people. That's the answer. If I could kill him myself, I would do it. And he says that in the show. And
he's so decisive about it.
Well, okay, motherfucker, here he is. Do it.
Yeah.
And then to realize that is also a person. And then they're a product of something. And then they're the result. And then they're not the problem. They're the result of a problem. And now the drug thing, the cartel thing is has metastasized so many times into something so terrible that it's almost funny to think of it 10 years ago. But the notion is a point of view exercise. So you're with him, having to do this thing, and then sort of getting pulled into other points of view. I
think it's actually some of that AFI training you were talking about, this idea that you've looked so deeply into each of these characters' backgrounds that you're able to switch the perspectives and create a real understanding of, the depth of not just one character, but multiple characters and where they're coming from.
Well, even in the barbershop scene at the beginning, you sort of enter with the drug lord, with the barber. And it's kind of funny because people project themselves onto something. Like, I don't agree with the barber at all. But he exists.
Yeah.
And people will be like, I really agree with your film, with what you were saying with the barber. And I'm like, what was I saying with the barber? It's like, that I'm not saying that. Like, that's him.
They're seeing it.
You are putting yourself there. But for example, the kid who comes in, that kid likes what the barber does. And he's actually listening to the barber more than the barber's son is. So when he gets kicked out, you're kind of in that kid's point of view because you're like, he didn't really do anything wrong.
Yeah.
So when he gets kicked out, you're in that kid's point of view, which starts to, that ambiguity starts to become worked before you even know it's going to, like, way before he arrives at the drug lord, you already showed him somebody that he detests, but that is not a bad person.
I think that's why there's so much beautiful moral ambiguity. I want to talk a little bit about Miss Bala as well, which is, of course, an adaptation of a remake of an old story. Again, depth and complexity of this main character. What were the challenges specifically about adapting a well-known Mexican story like that and being responsible for the remake of it?
It sucked because you are not responsible of the end result. So that's a different conversation than Blue Beetle, briefer one. But it's like it's a story that I'll tell you what attracted me to it.
Okay.
What attracted me to it was the notion of the first Miss Bala, the original, is a wonderful, also, by the way, made by a director who went to AFI. And it's an incredible study of point of view. Meaning, you can't know anything she doesn't know in that movie. You don't see anything she doesn't see. You are not privy to any information she doesn't have, which has an incredible effect of making you feel like a woman in Mexico would feel in her situation, which is you get pulled over by this DA guy, then the cops show up, and you don't know
what's happening,
what at the top is happening at all. And it was a fantastic exercise in point of view, like really brilliant. What attracted me to Miss Bala, to that remake, was the notion of saying, how can you because they were like, okay, look, we needed to work in America, so it can't just be in Spanish. And to me, it was, how can you create a character who is from both places and from none? So here you have this woman who grew up in Tijuana, but is not from Tijuana, and then she goes to America and then returns to Tijuana, and she's kind of like, she also doesn't belong in America, and she doesn't belong in Tijuana, and then her friend, who is very from Tijuana, goes missing, so she has to go find this person. Yeah. And in the original Miss Bala, there's really no agency to this character. Not that that's a bad thing.
Right.
If you're involved in the drug war, your agency is zero.
Limited.
But what happens, her friend goes missing, and then she has to survive. To me, it was, what if she wanted to find her friend? What would that send her through? And then what if the bad guy, quote unquote, what if the antagonist was also a person whose identity is in flux, and that flux of identity between them connected them, which made it complicated for that guy to be the bad guy to you, because you feel that although he's a sociopath, he also grew up in Bakersfield, then went to Mexico, and then went back to Bakersfield, and the people from Mexico called him, a gringo, and the person from Bakersfield called him a Mexican, and he's from neither of the places, just like her.
But I love this, the multiple I love how your experiences as a child and with multiple backgrounds in your family have led so deeply into your explorations of these characters, because you're always thinking about what their various backgrounds are and how that would play into the story. And I think that's one of the things that makes your writing so dynamic.
Thank you. That's very kind. I mean, I don't know that those things ended up in the movie.
No,
but that was the intention. That was the attempt.
I have one more question about Blue Beetle specifically, because in that process, one of the things that you write or you create in that story is this balance between magical realism and technology. And that's a theme that we've explored in other stories. Tell me about exploring, like, where you add, when you're creating a superhero world, where you're creating the actual real tech that now humans can use to be a superhero, and where magical realism is, where you were making those decisions. How did you make those decisions?
They're very intuitive, and I think it comes from, like, I read and it's interesting because magical realism, there's one of my favorite writers is a magical realism writer, but it's a term that is very thrown around, and that there's also there's a rigor about what really who are the real Latin American magical realists. And there's a guy whose name is Julio Cortázar. He's like my favorite storyteller, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was growing up, his short stories would just blow my mind all the time. So to me, with Jaime, it was about, look, you're like 22 and something, and then you start sort of like, tearing through the lore of the comics, right?
Sure.
So because there's like a shitload of stuff.
When were those comics written?
Well, the first
What
Blue
year?
Beetle, I think it began in the 30s.
The
And
30s.
and it's always a reflection of America and of a certain type of psyche. So the first guy's a cop,
Okay.
right? And he's just running around, just dressed in Blue Beetle. The second guy is an archaeologist who finds this magic, not scientific, not sci-fi, this magic scarab that gives him powers.
So as the years went on, he kind of transitioned to these different characters.
And then you change him into another guy in the 80s who's more of a Reagan era guy, more of an America in the up kind of guy.
Of course.
And instead he's a billionaire, but he's kind of fallible, and then eventually it turns into Jaime Reyes. So it's reflecting America in different ways.
Gosh, I love that about our history of comics and superheroes.
It's amazing the mirror that they are. So there, but then in the lore, and once the comics once Jaime, somebody comes up with a great idea of saying, okay, it shouldn't be magic, it should be sci-fi. And then how do we attach it to the very core of everything? So in DC...
What a challenge.
Yeah. And very smart. It's like...
Gareth's sitting in his writing nook. He's got his visuals. He's got his music. And now he's got to somehow attach technology to magical realism.
And if you talk about cultural ambassadorship, it's like there's no reason anybody wants to make this other than it's the first Mexican thing. And I don't mean it in a negative way, but it really is kind of like... Listen, man, like if you have a movie that has like, I don't know, Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya in it, it's going to get made whether the script sucks, whether the you know what I'm saying? Like it'll take so much to bring that movie down. When all you have is Blue Beetle and whether your script's going to be good or not. That's a lot of pressure. And so it's like, what are the things that are going to make this unique and really powerful? And among the things that is very lightly explored in the movie, but that really helped me connect to it, was the notion that the sort of the origin of the scarab, and this is not my idea, this is just something I discovered in the comics, and I think it's Kiffin's idea, is like this fucking thing. The DC universe is divided by sectors. So just the literal universe is divided by the people that understand the whole universe in sectors.
Okay.
I can't remember. Ours is 84 something, 85. It's 4 digits.
Okay.
I can't remember right now what it is. The where humans inhabit, but it's like it's our solar system and beyond. It's like a galactic sector, and it's 4 digits.
Oh, this is so nerdy. We got to do a whole podcast on it.
The origin of the universe and the oldest part of the universe, that's really cool to me, is like the oldest part of the universe is sector 0001. The Green Lanterns and all this bullshit, they come from that sector.
I didn't know any of this.
I know, me neither. And then the Reach, who created the Scarab, per this guy, come from sector 0002.
Okay.
So it's something really powerful that your character.
What's 0002?
Is basically the another section of the universe, and if you think of the universe as old and young, which is a trippy concept because time is a dimension, not a linear. Anyway, so if you think about, imagine that.
I think we just fell out of space and time. There was a second dimension, and then I fell into another realm, you guys.
So let's put it this way: the Green Lanterns are from 0001, and the Reach are the people that built the armor that goes onto him. These people are the worst enemies of the 0001 people. Okay, and they create these machines to send them through space and colonize planets by grafting onto a host, taking over the host completely, and then destroying the planet. And then you summon the other fucking guys, and they arrive, and they harvest the planet.
Wow.
In the case of this thing...
So much mythology.
I know. Something happens to it that awakens it. So this artificial intelligence is no longer just... something that's a weapon that's designed to have a like, think if you're a programmed soldier. I am freeing America every second, no matter who I have to fucking free the fuck out of, right?
Sure.
Or I am, an invading Mongol, right? That I'm gonna fucking run through China. And someday you go, but why am I that? So this thing becomes self-aware.
Itself, yeah.
So when it grabs onto Jaime, instead of having to kill everybody, the journey it'll go on is, who am I and who are we?
Together.
And the magic is in, like, if you think about, you really have to imagine really what is happening on a molecular level when something grabs into your spine and it's going to have to control your brain.
Yeah, it's part of you and an extension of you.
Yes, how is it connecting to you, right? Is it using Bluetooth or is it using what? So the notion that it would send, thousands or millions of nanometric filaments and coil around your brain is a very visceral feeling.
You can feel it.
Yes, and where does the cable end and your synaptic begins? In between those two things, I think that's where the magic is. So who am I, who are you, and who are we became sort of a very interesting question for Jaime. So the whole first movie, he can't even connect to it. He can't talk to it. It's making him, it's kind of doing things to him. And then it's not until the end where he starts to realize what the fuck it is. So anyway, it's a very nerdy, very long question.
I love this nerdy conversation. You have to have been so overwhelmed with this research dump. Like, not only do you have the responsibility of creating the magical realism and pairing it with the technology for this character, but you also have the responsibility of years of mythology. I don't even know. I mean, I'm so I don't know how you tackle that.
It's very intuitive, and it's very just kind of like you're just kind of letting, those little things, those games where you like drop a ball and it's like just banging against things. It's kind of like that, where you just kind of bang and then things start sticking to you and you have to be like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to bring this. Some things fall off.
How many years did you work on that script?
It was kind of funny because I actually wrote 2 different scripts for Blue Beetle.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I first got hired in 2018 and the studio I wrote it for got sold 3 times.
No way.
While I was there. Yeah.
Wow, the plight of a creative.
Oh my
guys.
God.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Oh my God. So the script survived. It's actually, not to blow myself, but it survived 3 studio
That's
sales.
amazing.
Yeah. So, and it's in part thanks to this one executive, Galen Baseman, shout out.
Shout out.
But when it first started, they're like, okay, we are going to we want to fucking do this, da, da, da. And I have a meeting with them, and to me, it's really like more important than not more important, but like what really makes it special is his family, right? And the tone that this will have, and the humor. That's sort of what you were speaking about. That I was like, I get that. Like I could write that right now. I could write a million episodes of this. I could watch a whole movie of Jaime and Rudy going to O'Reilly's and just buying something. Like, who gives a fuck? And the car breaks down in the middle. But they say, okay, no, we want like a $60-70 million movie, so it has to be like this. So it was set in a place that was more like where Rudy and his family are from in real life, which is Yuma, Arizona. So I was like, let's put it in Yuma, Arizona. Let's make it a place like that. That's close to the border, but like that's far enough where the border is not something you see every day, but you know it's right there. And then make it more of a Spielbergian movie, where it's like where you can get like, and it was also really a family movie, but it was smaller. It was just really way smaller. And then I turned in the script, and they really liked it. They're like really funny. We really love the characters. The characters were essentially the same that you have now, except the dad was dead in the first one. And then in the second one, they go, okay. We like the studio got sold, but everybody really likes
this movie,
and everybody really likes the characters, and everybody really likes the humor of it and the tone. Can you transpose that to just make up a bigger fucking place? And I wasn't there, but it seems like it comes down to a meeting with a bunch of executives of like a bigger even
this
conglomerate.
This is how the writer imagines this.
Yeah. Just a bigger conglomerate, and they come and they say, you know, these execs, and they're going like, yeah, we got this Blue Beetle movie, we really like it. And they go like, yeah, when we're set in Arizona, like that sounds dusty. I'm sure it was something like that. And then they go, can it be a tropical, more fun place? And then they come to you and they go, look, I mean, and these people are more thoughtful. So they come to you and say, look, you know, and they're also storytellers. So they're like, okay, is there a way that we could create this, put it here, and make it a little bigger? It's more of a city, not just and maybe it's Miami, maybe it's like a place like that. So I was like, well, at first you're like, oh, fuck. Like, oh, my God. Like, you have to do everything again.
Charlie likes to call it pulling on a thread. If you pull on a thread at the beginning, then you if you pull on one thread, you redo the whole thread.
So imagine if I ask you right now, how are you breathing right now? How are you doing that? But how are you? Fuck, I mean, enough the conversation's over, and now you're just trying to figure out how your lungs are sucking. Yeah. Why you keep breathing air in? Why do you keep doing it? I don't know. So they were like, now we need the movie to be bigger. We need the movie to be like $100 million. And we need to make $1 billion. We're like, oh fuck. Okay.
No pressure.
No
Gareth.
pressure.
No pressure at all.
So then you go, okay, so what is a bigger movie? What is a bigger movie in scope? And they were like, and we would like for the dad to be alive. That was an interesting conversation for me because I was like, I grew up kind of like not without a dad, but my parents split up. And then my dad sort of left the United States. So I didn't grow up with a dad every day that is your dad.
Yeah, so this is something you knew that you were writing.
Yeah, and I was like, fuck, I don't know how to write this dad.
Yeah.
And then I became a father. And then I was just kind of, the dad was, you have this very classic dad where it's like stern and, you know, loves you deep down, but kind of has, where it's like, why does it have to be that? Why can't he just be a really loving, fucking nice guy?
Yeah.
So once that clicked in, and then he just graduated, and I started creating. The pandemic had just began, so I was like, it has to be about economic disparity because when this is over, the poor are going to be poorer, and the rich are going to be richer, which is what happens every time shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So my wife one time, my wife's family lost their house in 2008. So I was like, they should feel like they're going to lose their house.
Lose their house.
And they didn't tell you because you were studying. But everybody else had to deal with that shit.
They didn't tell you because you were studying.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck? So those notions, as you have to like deal with them, became really interesting to me. And then from there, it was how do you create the character? Also, at first, they were like, don't put other characters from the DC universe in this, just put him. And then I was like, can I bring in other Blue Beetles? And that's where Ted Kord came in. And I was like,
Oh, I love that.
so this world and this daughter became a lot more like, sort of like me, where my dad is a white guy from America, well, not from America, from Scotland, but her dad's American, her mom's Latin American, and that Jenny Kord character became somebody I really understood. So she's like in between both worlds again. So, and then Jaime is from what world? Like hardcore, very Mexican American, but he's the product of two worlds. So that became the process of the two. And actually, I way more, even though I hated it at the beginning, I think the second script is way better than the first one. Yep.
Are you allowed talking? I don't know. Are you allowed talking about future projects at all?
Some, depends. Ask me.
What are you working on, Gareth?
A lot of stuff. Some stuff.
What is the thing you're most excited for next year, Gareth?
Well, look.
What are you allowed telling me about, Gareth?
Well, I think because it's already been in the news,
Announced,
kind of.
Right?
The boys, Mexico, I mean, it's still being negotiated and still being everybody's whatever. I don't want to say too much about that, but like, the story is really fun. I mean, it's just, if you've seen the show, The Boys is really what happens when they go to Mexico and try to sell us that shit.
Yeah.
And all of Latin America.
Yeah.
I mean, every studio, every company, whether not even just movies, like every corporation conglomerate has a branch called LATAM, which means Latin America.
Latin America.
So what is the debacle of trying to sell Mexican superheroes? And what is a Mexican superhero? Because there's going to have to be a marketing conversation of saying, how do we make people relate to this guy and believe they're like Coca-Cola was sold to Mexicans, right? To the point where like Mexicans, me included, grow up drinking
Coca-Cola.
so much of
Yeah.
it. Where you're like, Coke is like a Mexican thing. And then, you know what I'm saying? And Starbucks arrived. And how do you make Starbucks Mexican?
Mexican.
Because we're going to have the, fucking, I don't know, like the, there's going to be the
dulce de leche cafe.
You know what I mean? Or like, where it's like the Aztec chocolate, fucking hot chocolate. Or
horchata.
We're going to have horchata, and we're going to have this, and we're going to have that. And that's Mexican. And then but it works. And people just buy into it.
No, one of my favorite things in the world when I was a kid was to travel to India and then to eat Pizza Hut or to eat McDonald's or to eat Starbucks.
I mean,
because all the food's different. And you can only get it in India. You can get like tandoori chicken pizza at Pizza Hut in India.
Like
that's crazy.
McDonald's had this burger called Magnifica, and it was delicious, and it had like chipotle sauce on it.
Yeah.
And you could not find it in America. But at the same time, if an American arrives and he wants a Big Mac, that Big Mac is going to taste the same
as the other Big Mac.
as the fucking one in the North Pole and the one in Singapore, like wherever. The boys I grew up like, I was a kid pre-NAFTA and post-NAFTA, and I saw, like, when I was growing up, I drank milk from, like, a cow, like, in a bottle. And my aunt had a ranch, and they would bring milk, and you boil the milk.
We have a farm in India, our family does, and it's the same thing. Milk the cow.
Yeah, and there's
take
milk.
the milk, boil
Delicious.
the milk. Delicious.
And then it was an influx of, Snickers, Pepsi, Nike, and all these things that were very, very crazy in globalization and neoliberal ideas. And the boys is kind of like, what is the fucking death of all that? What is where that all just runs into its own bullshit? And how do you tell the story in the most hilarious, just craziest, the boys way? To put it in movies is like if you saw the movie Fitzcarraldo meets Michael Clayton. So it's like those two movies are very
put together.
Inspiring. Yep.
I love that. I can't wait for that. Okay, so I'm going to do one last section, then we're going to get you out here.
No worries.
This is our rapid fire segment where we do a character study of the man that is Gareth. So we asked you what your favorite drink was. You said coffee, but then we talked.
It's not really coffee, but
it's not really coffee. What's your favorite drink?
I think to me, it's a rum and coke, but like with Zacapa rum, sparkling water. I call it mineral water because that's what we call it in Spanish. But my wife's always like, it's not mineral water, it's sparkling water. So
There's a difference, though. Just for those finites out there, there's a difference between sparkling water and mineral
yes,
water.
Topo Chico, for example, is mineral water.
Exactly.
So highball glass, like the ones like a Tom Collins glass, ice, Zacapa rum, sparkling water, just a dash of Coke. That.
What memory does that elicit for you?
Drinking. It elicits a feeling good memory.
A good memory.
Actually, it wipes away many memories. That's why I like it.
Tell me, when I say the word home, what do you think of?
My grandparents' house in Querétaro. And my son, Joaquin. Yep.
What about the word heaven?
The word heaven is my son, Joaquin.
Hell.
Hell is in my phone, in social media, and sometimes in a notes meeting. It's hell.
Notes meeting.
Yeah.
I relate to that. What is the food that makes you feel most comforted?
It's even though it's like tacos, like good tacos. Like
I'm getting hungry.
yeah, good tacos are the best. A tortilla, a really good tortilla, whatever's on it, even if there's nothing.
What sound makes you smile?
When my son laughs,
How old is your son now?
he's 3.
Oh, wow. How do you define love?
Wanting somebody else to be happy.
How do you define success?
Feeling happy with what you've done.
How do you define failure?
I mean, I could say a Michael Jordan quote, but I'm not gonna do that, and I don't believe it. Failure is when what you thought was gonna happen didn't, and it hurts. Yeah.
Do you believe in magic?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, a form of it. There's a place where metaphysics or where physics. I mean, I don't understand Bluetooth any more than a person from the Ice Age knew how the sun came up. Like I don't get it.
What about second chances?
Yes.
How about love at first sight?
Also, it happens. Yeah.
Without
Like
considering
an illness. Yeah.
Like an illness, love
Yeah.
at first
It
sight,
just-
it just happened.
Yeah.
Without considering time, ability, or money as an obstacle, if you could do one thing or learn one thing other than what you already do, what would you do?
I will learn every language in the world.
Every language. How many languages do you speak?
Only 2.
Yeah, me too. Who would you, or what would you create a story about if you could create any story with anyone or about anything?
Fuck, I mean, I think about that every day. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I know the answer to that, I mean, the thing is, right now, I just want to write about what I'm writing right now. But I can't tell you what that is.
That's okay.
But it would be what I'm writing
Okay.
right now. Because that's what you fall in love
That's
with.
what we call a cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. A cliffhanger. What word best describes you as a storyteller?
Identity.
What inspires or drives you?
I don't know. I mean, there's one where I'm copying and ripping off. There's a great filmmaker. His name is Michael Haneke. And they in this movie, they once asked him, "Why do you do things? Why do you make films? Or why do you do what you do?" And he says, "Never ask a centipede why it walks, for it will stumble." So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I should maybe, but I don't
I
know.
think that's a great answer. And last but not least, what is your favorite story?
My favorite story. Wow, that's really good.
First one that came to mind.
It's a ghost story from my grandparents' house, but I would have to tell the whole story. But it's a great one.
That's great.
Yeah.
We might have to have you back to do that sometime. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the. This was really fun. Nice to see you.
Appreciate
Nice
you.
to see you, Charlie. Thank you.